Hey, I wanted to send you a bit of a resource for you as we're doing these exploratory calls or we're setting up these exploratory calls. The way that we conduct our initial approach call, that initial outbound cold call, is really straightforward. So we want to take that same straightforward methodology or mentality into that exploratory call, because if we call with a down to the point brass tacks kind of thing on the approach call, and then we go to a warm fuzzy non-succinct exploratory call, that's going to really mess things up. So you likely don't need this, but just in case, I wanted to share some suggestions with you. So here it is. So a 15 to 30 minute exploratory call. Here's our recommendation is you do a bit of an opening that forecasts what this is going to look like, that it's going to be direct to the point, and that it's going to be a good use of their time. So it'd be something along these lines. So, hey, Naim, thanks so much for putting your time aside today. I know that whenever we scheduled this, we had either 15 or 30 minutes set aside. So out of curiosity, are you a hard stop that we should jump right into this and maybe skip some of the niceties, or are we able to take a little bit more of a conversational back and forth approach to this? Which way should I play it? You should play it blank or blank. Got it. Okay. So based upon that, then I'm going to move over to the agenda. Got it. So let's jump right into this. If you don't mind, let me lay out a bit of an agenda here. So since we have 15 minutes, let's jump right into it. And from a high level perspective, what I'd like to do is find out how you're doing whatever it is that your product or service is doing. So on our end is how are you doing? How are you going to market today? How are you setting meetings, driving those opportunities into pipeline, managing pipeline, taking that to close and revenue? So can you paint for me the picture today? So that's how we would do it. Maybe on your end, if you're in technology. So can you share with me a little bit about how you're keeping up with your technology today? What's the team look like? What are some of the tools that you're leveraging? Can you paint for me that picture? Or if you're in whatever, you kind of get the point here. So from a high level, what's your current blank structure? How are things working today? Then from there, I'd like to share with you a little bit about what and how we do it from an extremely high level philosophy, core competencies kind of thing. And then based upon that, we can make some decisions. But before I go jumping right into my agenda, Naim, could you maybe share with me a little bit about what makes this a good use of your time? What do you want to make sure that we cover? So that's the agenda piece of it. Then we want to lay out our outcomes. Okay, I want to hear what you do and how you do it. All right, makes perfect sense. We'll be sure to cover that. And typically, one of a couple of things are going to come out of that. And let me make a on-the-fly correction here. I switched this whenever I was doing it. Typically, one of three things is going to happen. One is, based upon the conversation, there is no immediate need. You're comfortable with your current state, or maybe it's just the reality of, my gosh, we can't handle another thing, but I was curious enough to hear what you do. So we might come to that conclusion. If that's indeed the case, no worries at all. The other side of that is you might absolutely hate our philosophy and our core competencies and that approach, and you choose not to move forward with that. And now clearly we'll be disappointed. However, I think it's important to talk through that. So we'd appreciate your transparency. And the same from our end. If we don't think that we can be used as a resource for you, we're going to come right out, let you know that, hey, I don't think that we can help. But hopefully we can make a couple of recommendations of some resources for you. Or the last thing that can really come out of here, the third piece is, we decide, yeah, you know what, philosophies, methodology, timing works, at least to explore this a little bit further. Not saying that we'll end up doing business, but we should at least explore this a little bit further. And then at that point, we can schedule a more in-depth conversation, bring ever who else we should bring into that conversation, and get that on the calendar. So those are typically the way that the things that come out of this exploratory call. We good with that? Yeah, sure. Let's get started. Okay, perfect. So I guess if you can, clearly, now we're at the start here. Clearly, I went on your website, did some research before our conversation here, but I find it's always best to hear from your perspective. Can you paint for me the picture of how you're doing, fill in your product or service here at a high level? Would you mind sharing with me that? That way I can make sure I understand the best way to adapt our conversation to achieve your goals. Yeah, sure. And then go through it, asking some questions along the way, making sure that you clearly are getting a picture of what they do and how they do it today. And then from that explanation, you're going to clearly get some insights about some likely problems that they're having based upon your experience. Then once they're done with that and you've asked a couple of clarifying questions, then you say this, the next part of this. Hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being, listen, I'm ready to fire everyone, close the doors. This is the most frustrating structure that is even imaginable. Now, I'm not hearing that. And then a 10 is, and now you say explicitly and specifically what a 10 would be like if they were using you, right? So you're doing an assumptive, this is happening. Angels are singing from above. Hallelujah, because blank, 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 right? As specifically as possible, how would their life look like if they fully implemented and were working with you? So that's a 10. So explain that. They'll likely say, 5, 6, 7. That's the number one answer. But the key to this is really responding appropriately. So if it's a 1 to 4, come to their rescue and save them. Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, I find that hard to believe. It can't be that bad. I mean, you're running a good company. I mean, help me understand why a 1, a 2, a 3, or 4, and get them to explain it. Then if it's a 5 to a 7, you know what? That's the number one answer that we get. Fully was anticipating that. Thanks for sharing that with me. If it's an 8, my gosh, that's pretty good. What were you hoping we could do? If it's a 9 to 10, again, deny it, but from the opposite perspective. Wow, a 9 or a 10, my goodness, that's really good. Why would you even want to mess with it? It's working, right? So that's what we do there. Then we want to use this exact language. Once you get that explanation, then we want to use this exact language. Hey, what are the 3, 4, maybe 5 things that if you could correct right now, or if you can improve upon, that would have the biggest impact on blank, blank, blank? So get that from them, and then simply ask what else, and what else, until they say, I think that's really it. And it's key here to say what else, not anything else, because if you say what else, they'll tend to elaborate more. If you say anything else, nope, that's it. It's a hook. It's kind of like if you walk into a store, may I help you? The hook is, no, I'm just looking. If you ask what else or anything else, and the hook is, nope, that's it. That's why it's subtle nuance. We want to say what else, then got it. Can you help me then? Let's prioritize this. If it's A, B, C, and D, if you could only pick one of those to fix that would have the biggest impact, which one? All right. And then after that, all right, that leaves that. All right. So now we can go one of a couple of ways here. One is, hey, I'll come back to this in a minute, but would it help maybe right now if we transition a little bit, that I can share with you our philosophy, methodology, how we go about this, and maybe share with you our core competencies? We can go into that. Now, as a quick aside, if depending on their personality, if they're a real strong personality, like think of a DISC profile, a really high D, or very analytical, that high C, or from a PI, predictive index standpoint, it's that type A personality. Let's just do this, or that really high D in a DISC, or excuse me, in a PI, that really detailed type. You might want to do this EduCell sooner, or this core competency sooner, before we go into this. So it's really going to be depending on the personality, but it would be something along these lines. So whether it's a very beginning or after we've gone through their list, then it's transition to this. Would it help if I shared with you a little bit about our philosophy, methodology, maybe a couple of our core competencies? Then you go into our philosophy, right? So your philosophy should be really a one-liner, a one sentence that covers what you do. Our core competence, or our philosophy, is this: entrepreneurship is the greatest, one of the greatest impacts on our community out there. So good entrepreneurs running a good business that really care for their clients and generates a lot of revenue, can do a lot of good. I mean, look what Bill Gates is doing. It's that type of thing. That's their philosophy. So in order to help organizations to do that, our core competencies are this, and then you go into your core competencies, and it's really an edge you sell, right? So our core competencies are this. Number one is hiring sales talent, right? Even bad salespeople tend to interview. Well, actually, they interview better than the good salespeople. So how do we identify them, source them, vet them, make sure that we have really good sales talent? And we can either do that for you as one of our core competencies. So let me just stop there. Any questions? All right. Second core competency is this. Maybe you don't want to set up your own sales team. It's expensive. It's hard to manage. It's hard to hire, as we just pointed out. So oftentimes people want to leverage us for our second core competency, which is sales development. And then you explain that. So that gives you an idea. You want to give your philosophy, then core competencies in a story format, stopping in between each one of those core competencies. And you'd likely want to keep your core competencies to maybe 2, 3, no more than 4. That's really what you want to do there. So those are your philosophies and core competencies. Then you go upon this. So after you're getting some feedback from them, then you go to this. Hey, based upon the conversation so far and looking at the clock, might I make this suggestion? It seems like, at least from a high level, there's an alignment of a philosophy in our core competencies. Why don't we do this? Let's set up our next conversation. Bring in whomever else that we should bring into that call, and let's get that on the calendar so we can get this, keep this progressing forward. Because I think, at least, like I said, at a high level, there seems to be alignment here. Does that make sense? So we make this suggestion. We guide in a leadership teaching approach, as opposed to asking or really being weak in this area. We want to be a strong leader that gently guides them to the promised land. So that's what we want to do. So that's hopefully helpful on how to conduct a really good exploratory call or exploratory meeting. Thanks so much.